Hey gang, I know it's been a little while since I last stepped into the lab, but I wanted to try something totally different than my normal style, branch out a bit here to talk about something that's, quite frankly, dominated the forefront of my thoughts since its release, and yes, I'm talking, of course, about the cinematic moment of 2020, with the release of Monster Hunter.
Psych! That's the wrong number!
You know, I actually skipped this movie recently. A buddy had asked me to go to it, and it just struck me as very much wait and watch it for free on a long airplane ride-esque. But that's just me, and a conversation for another time.
A good question. For another time.
I have not had so satisfying a spectator experience since the 2014 Spurs redeemed the Ray Allen in the corner bang moment, and I haven't involuntarily screamed at my TV as loudly since the Broncos last played in the Super Bowl.
Hey, I'm going to drink a lot of Budweiser tonight, Tracy, and I promise you that.
The whole point of this video, as the title suggests, is to ask the question, what would have happened to our squad of heroes if Luke hadn't showed up? Before we get there, I have to clarify that I could not have been more happy with the conclusion of Season 2. The father-son moment between Grogu and Din made any human with a pulse cry while simultaneously allowing us to sleep soundly, knowing that the blessed child is safe for now in the arms of Luke, who, let's be honest, is much more physically capable of protecting our sweet prince than Din could ever be. That's not at all an insult against Din, it's just a fact, and I don't think anyone on here is going to argue with me on that. But what about Kylo tearing down the temple? Child, please, Grogu survived the wrath of Anakin. You really think an untrained emo who's a one-trick pony on Star Wars Battlefront is going to be capable of getting after Baby Yoda? What's much more important, do you think Disney will ever let their newly anointed merchandise Golden Goose be harmed? This is the same company that monetized the greatest piece of Star Wars fan fiction ever made for themselves, which, to be clear, does mean that Star Wars Theories Vader, Shards of the Past, now qualifies as canon. But I digress. This episode was a work of art, and there's not a thing I would change about it, except for the two things I would change about it. And one thing I'm going to change that I don't want to change, but again, it goes back to the whole title of this video. Din shouldn't have taken his helmet off in the episode prior. I obviously understand why they did what they did, but the goodbye between our illegitimate interspecies father and son would have been that much more powerful without that happening first. You know, I'm actually of the opinion that they should have taken it a step further than that. If there's ever a time for a helmet removal, it's certainly the season finale, but in Season 1, they should have instead potentially positioned the camera behind Pedro's head to look at the droid as he's healing him. It's fine and dandy that the droid isn't a living being, but for those of us watching at home who are neither a Roomba nor a toaster, we shouldn't see your face either, as we qualify as living beings. Also, I think it would have made for a cool shot and allowed us at home to experience the same cooling sensations of the icy hot juice that ultimately healed Din. The second thing I would have changed would be, as many others have mentioned, give the child the little ball shifter thingy. As I see it, the only reason they deprived the child of the toy in his Happy Meal was to ensure that the door remained cracked open to revisit these two later down the line. I'm not a betting man, but honestly, if it were up to me, I'd like to see how Din makes it on his own for a while and think about a Grogu reunion towards the end of Season 4, start of 5-ish, rather than returning them together right away. That's the only reason I can think of not giving Grogu the ball. That being said, I have so much faith and confidence in this Favreau and Filoni team that I know this had to be an intentional decision on their part, and I'm willing to trust them to ultimately make good on this choice later down the line. So now that that's out of the way, let's ask the question. What if Luke was a no-show? Sure, we can what if this thing to death about other heroes arriving in the same X-Wing right in the nick of time, but let's just say the cavalry isn't coming, so our squad is on their own, up against the most ferocious droids we have seen to date. In true villain fashion, Moff Gideon lays out the ridiculously slow-moving and easily escapable ploy that will bring about certain doom, but to be honest, I'm not so sure if that's the case. Let me tell you why. Now, Mando's pistol wasn't cutting the mustard against the battlebot, but that was Mando's side piece, not his disintegration musket. And I get that the disintegration musket itself is still on the ship, but the point is, between the Quattro Amigas as we saw, they're clearly carrying more substantial firepower than Mando had at his disposal. Here's another place I'd like to get tactical. The Dark Troopers were waiting patiently in line. If it took Qui-Gon Jinn with a lightsaber a hot minute to break through blast doors, then let's assume that fist-battering rams will require even longer, and only allow a tight opening at least to start. So our initial hallway troopers are going to be stumbling all over each other, waiting patiently to have death rain down on them from 5 angles as they work through the doors. Take some artistic liberties with me here and picture the Battle of Thermopylae, but for Dark Troopers against our heroes. Let's say the initial wave takes out 8 of our robots, with another 2 required to fully open the blast doors. We're starting with a platoon of 40 troopers. We're down to 32 remaining fighters, with 2 actively employed as doorstops. The doors were giving way, and the troopers are going to get more organized, so after prying the doors open, a dozen troopers come flooding in right before the doors quickly reactivate and snap shut, crushing the 2 who were holding the doors in the first place. We're now down to 30. At this point, it's on. 3 of our heroes are wearing Beskar, Fennec Shan is basically a robot, also doesn't miss, and Cara Dune has the heaviest firepower out of them all, but also has a real-world killer armbar and left hook. We get to see jetpack combat actually be a thing that happens as the Mandalorians zip around dodging and blasting. Fennec Shan is one of the most valued assets as she doesn't miss and snipes the Dark Troopers in their only weak spot.
I missed. I never miss.
Decapitating 2 before disarming 1 and going into hand-to-hand combat. Cara Dune unloads an entire drum into 1 who falls flat before her just as another approaches from directly behind the first approaching Dark Trooper. It now seeks vengeance for its fallen brother and is still pissed about losing Daisy to the home invaders. While Cara Dune is the most offensively, physically capable fighter we have here, she's also the most at risk with the minimal amount of protection. She catches a stray blast around before being overrun by Dark Troopers. The situation looks helpless. Each of our heroes struggle as the blast doors are again opened. Moff Gideon strolls casually towards the child, taunting them as he waltzes to victory. He looks back to observe Mando, all 4 limbs pinned to the floor as Dark Troopers struggle to unmask him. Cara, closest to death, unconscious and tossed aside. Koska, caught by the ankle as she unsuccessfully tries to fly away from a Dark Trooper. He scoffs and grins as the remaining 20 Dark Troopers enter the bridge. He turns around and reaches down for the child, until he hears it. The Darksaber is unsheathed as Bo-Katan slices through a Dark Trooper like a hot knife through butter. She has swallowed her pride and accepted the Darksaber, and she now wields it with a vengeance. This is the same Bo-Katan who studied under Pre Vizsla, not a Jedi himself, but nevertheless a competent enough sword fighter that he went toe-to-toe with Darth Maul after he was a bit past his prime. The tables have turned. The Dark Troopers are falling. Bo and Mando team up with Darksaber and Beskar staff as Den skewers a Dark Trooper and spins it like a rotisserie chicken before Bo-Katan carves it with the Darksaber, preparing a Thanksgiving dinner for that one guy who once ate a plane. That's actually a thing. Do yourself a favor. Don't look it up. The Darksaber is passed around the room between our allies in the moments when they need it most. The conflict is still a struggle. Cara Dune is lost as Disney grows uneasy with the amount of unwokelessness from Gina Carano on Twitter. Cara Dune is lost as she wasn't wearing Beskar. Fennec Shan is again cut, revealing all of the machinery inside her, as a Dark Trooper stops and has an emotional moment, realizing it's trying to kill one of its own, before she makes one final stand, thrusting a thermal detonator inside its chrome dome, obliterating them both as machine parts fly everywhere. Between the Darksaber and every weapon in our hero's arsenal, there's a dozen total remaining troops, and we're down to the 3 Mandalorians. Koska rains light artillery on the Dark Troopers, and Mando goes for some good old-fashioned jetpack jousting with the Beskar spear. Bo-Katan continues to slice. Unfortunately, though, Moff Gideon's prophecy is coming true. There are just too many of them. The Dark Troopers manage to knock the Darksaber out of Bo-Katan's hand. The momentum of battle again shifts in favor of the troopers. A Dark Trooper now wields the Darksaber and strikes down over Mando's head, who blocks it with Gandalf's staff. The Beskar heats up and eventually starts to bend before finally breaking through. Mando uses the superheated tips of the now split staff to stab the Dark Trooper twice through the head simultaneously on either side. But as he reaches for the Darksaber, he is blindsided from behind as the Darksaber slides to the feet of Moff Gideon, overlooking the scene, child in hand. Koska is defeated, Bo-Katan is overrun, and Mando is again subdued. It is over. The Dark Troopers have won. It was more than a valiant stand. It was an epic one. Legendary, even. The Dark Troopers outnumbered our heroes 40-5. The now 8 remaining Dark Troopers have the 2 remaining Mandalorians in their grasp. The situation is helpless. Moff Gideon gloats that the more they struggle, the longer the inevitable will take. He stands over Mando with the Darksaber in hand as he brings the blade down to his throat. Mando instinctively tucks his chin as the blade starts to heat the Beskar of his helmet and shoulder guard. The end is near. Mando struggles against the blade. He cries out in pain. The blade now touches his neck. We hear a fast whizzing noise followed by a cacophony of metal pinging against metal. The Dark Troopers' red eyes grow black as they both fall away. We watch through Mando's helmet as Moff Gideon looks over his failed Dark Troopers with confusion and disgust at their failure. It is then that we see it. A small silver ball comes catapulting up out of the heart of the Dark Trooper into the left eye of Moff Gideon. The child springs to the ground with a fury that can only be achieved through the love he has for his father figure. He is levitating his favorite toy and brandishing it like a knife. He flings it at two of the remaining Dark Troopers with the ferocity of David slaying Goliath. The ball is effective in destroying almost all of the remaining Dark Troopers, whizzing around the room, pinging around inside the Dark Troopers like a pinball. There is one remaining robot and it moves in to corral the child. The ball is stuck inside of a fallen Dark Trooper. Baby Yoda has dropped to the floor, exhausted. The Dark Trooper cannot hurt him, as that would go against its programming. The Dark Trooper reaches down to collect the child. We see the stare of the piercing red eyes before, once more, we hear it. The satisfying sound of a lightsaber unsheathed as the dark saber goes through the Dark Trooper's head, a scene similar to the first episode of Season 1 as Mando shoots the assassin droid from behind. Mando, head cocked to the side where he received the touch from the darksaber, falls to the ground after his one last Herculean effort to save the child. He lies on the ground as Grogu dawdles over to him, placing his tiny little hands on his helmet. We again get our emotional scene of true eye contact between father and son as Grogu's tiny 3 fingers touches his neck. We see the cut light up blue as Baby Yoda heals Mando. So, I mean, we could either have that, or just Boba Fett circles the wagon back around and goes Luke Skywalker on the battle droids, picking them off one at a time with every weapon in his arsenal. I don't know, what do you guys think? But who knows? The fact of the matter is, this episode was a masterpiece, and Luke Skywalker is back, baby. I haven't seen a character redeemed like this since Flo from Progressive started making actually funny commercials.
Hey, let's go get you an ice cream cone, champ.
The sprinkles?
Sprinkles are for winners.
I understand.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. This was a lot of fun to make. It was very tedious and time consuming. Lots of respect goes out to video essayists because that is not an easy undertaking. Nevertheless, I want to know what you think would have happened if Luke hadn't shown up. So signing off for now, like, comment, subscribe, all of that typical YouTube stuff, and we will see you guys in the next one.